This is the Public Art Advisory Committee, Tuesday, March 29th at 4:30 p.m. This meeting is compliant with the Ralph M. Brown Act as amended by California Assembly Bill number 361, effective September 16th, 2021, providing for a public health emergency exception to the standard teleconference rules required by the Brown Act. The purpose of this is to provide a safe environment for the public, staff, and the committee while allowing for public participation. The public may address the committee using exclusively remote public comment options. The committee may take action on any item listed on the agenda. To address the committee, members of the public may join this meeting and make a comment by raising their hands. They may email aibera@brisbaneca.org or text 415-407-2675. Special assistance. If you need special assistance to participate in this meeting, please contact myself at 415-508-2109. Notification in advance of the meeting will enable the city to make reasonable arrangements to ensure accessibility to this meeting. All right. Chair Davis.
Okay, so we'll start with roll call.
Councilmember Cunningham.
Present.
Park and Rec Commissioner Greenlee. Absent. Chair Davis.
Present.
Committee Member Grossman.
Present.
And Committee Member Salmon.
Here.
All right.
Approval of minutes of February 25th.
So we're going to start approval of agenda.
Oh, wait. Oh, yeah, I skipped. That's
Okay.
right. Thank you.
Mhm.
Approval agenda. Do I have a motion to approve?
I move that we approve the agenda.
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Okay. Motion passes. Approval of minutes of February 15th meeting.
Hey, Ingrid, how are you?
Like that motion.
Yeah,
I second.
Second. All right, all in favor?
I do.
Aye.
I hope this is all you need.
Minutes approved. All right, we'll move on to presentation and discussion items. I have item B. Oh, no, that's under that. Discuss the city's public art master plan.
All right, have a good night. Looks like I caught you just in time.
Yeah, this was to give the committee an opportunity to talk about the Belmont and Reno master plans, what items they thought they enjoyed about them, what items they thought might need to be beefed up in a master plan that we put together. The goal of all of this is to help us create a request for proposal for our master planning process for public art. So I think the focus should be on like, what are the areas that you think are important? Is there a style that you think is important? Is there information in there that you think is important that we as a city need to make sure that when we put together a request for proposal for ourselves, that we make sure that it's in a request for proposal so we get what we are looking for. Also, you might want to just talk generally about, what you thought of the way that they were done, what was the style, the general style of the master plans. Is there a style of, you're going to look at a lot of master plans. Is there a general style of master plans that you like more than others? So I was just going to let this be a very, my impression as from a staff perspective is this is going to be a wide open conversation amongst the committee members.
Karen, go for it.
Sorry about that. I just wanted to make a very general comment about the two styles of these two master plans. I felt that Belmont had a much more upbeat, encouraging, and simple approach. And in reading the Reno plan, there was quite a bit of negativity in the verbiage that they used in some places on it, which was a big turnoff to me. But there was nothing more than that's what hit me, was that Belmont seemed very upbeat, and Reno's, or if we don't do this, doom and despair will occur. So that was kind of my take. That's it. I'm gonna stop talking before I start coughing.
Camille?
When reading both of them, my first hit was that actually, I didn't think about the verbiage, but you're right. I felt that Reno had more intention, thus possibly that's where we need to address these things FYI and do them well. And that may have been it. In reading them, there was no doubt in my mind that, well, at least for me, that Reno did a deep dive. They did a deep, intensive dive and really explored it. At the same time, I think Reno is a much larger city. And so there's a lot that they had, well, there were a lot of partnerships they could make. There was a lot of artwork that goes back and forth and through that. They had a lot of partnerships with arts organizations, museums, businesses. Belmont's a little smaller in terms of its size, more relative to Brisbane. I felt that on the whole, I felt that Reno was more open to ideas. I got a little, I thought Belmont, when they came to what their goals were, they seemed a little explicit and kind of, this area is going to be designated for that. This area is going to be designated for that. I did like the depth of Reno. I don't know for a city of our size if it needs to be that in depth, but the inclusion and the way that they kind of did the breadth and the depth, I appreciated.
Thank you, Camille. Beth, would you like to share something?
No, I don't really have anything to say. I was ready to comment about it last meeting. I didn't realize we were doing it now. And so it's been over 3 weeks since I read it. And I've been participating and speaking at an International Nature of Cities conference all week. So I'm kind of in another place. And I'm sorry, I can't even really remember what I read. So I'd be talking off the top of my head. Sorry about that, but I was ready to speak about it last meeting. So.
That's fine. I agree with both of you. I originally read the Belmont a while back. It was probably one of the first ones I read several months ago. So I just kind of looked through it because I did read it and marked it a lot. And I found that it was easy to read. And it was probably of the ones I read, and I probably read more than half of the packets of the cities. It was the one that I think I felt like I identified with because it's very similar to our town on a hill and a very similar history. And I just found it very easy to read. And yes, they divided different areas of their community, whether it's walkways or gateways or the parks or the neighborhoods, and they wanted to make the commercial district be like their art walk. So yes, it was very intentional. But it just seemed like, okay, there's goals here. And then reading the Reno, I read a lot of it, worked page by page, and then part of it I just glanced. And yes, it's definitely a bigger city with the museums and things that we don't have. Probably, much bigger population, bigger funds. But somehow I think there's elements from that I think we can take from. And I do agree with what Karen said. They talked about how they put, I think it was Heiser's art, and I was like, oh, here we go. And people came unglued when that came in. I was like, oh, okay. And then how the community didn't respond to certain pieces of art. But I think it was good because they had already had art in place. So they talked about what happens when the community comes, has negative feedback. So there was that. And then there was about artists and how they have a hard time making a living, or the community doesn't appreciate the art. So there was that negativity that Karen did bring up. Some of it, I think it was like too much detail. Like, I think like some of it was stuff that I don't know that we needed to know all that. Like, I think we just want to get to the meat of it. So I definitely think there's elements that we can take from Reno and apply it to some of the things that Belmont has. They had like a schedule, they had a budget. They talked about there were certain things in there, how to navigate the funds, which I thought was interesting. They talked about a certain percentage actually from the city goes into art in addition to developer money. So that was kind of an interesting concept. So, Stuart, I don't know how how do we pick the elements, or what do we do? Do we just say, well, that one's close enough, or reach out to that company? I don't know how we proceed
Yeah, I mean,
with.
what
this.
I think, yeah, no, I understand. So the goal is to go through them. Are there topics that you want to see covered in hours that are covered in here? I think the idea of readability, it sounds like it's like one of those issues that is coming up. That the idea of intention, I've heard a couple of times. So, having maybe spending a little bit more time on the vision statement than they did in Belmont. Because the Belmont vision statement was very general, whereas I think Reno spent a little bit more time on that. So I think as you go through it and say, yeah, I really like this aspect of this for this reason, I can then, when I put together a request for proposal, and I say, here's the elements that we would see in the final product. And here's what the anticipation of that final product is. Also, you might want to look at them as far as like, how did they reach out to the public? Both of them talk about what their public outreach was in creating the master plan. So that's going to be one of the items I think that this committee is going to want to have outlined in the request for proposal, because the amount of outreach you do is one of the things that's going to inform the budget that somebody puts together.
Camille?
Yeah. Once again, I loved the depth of Reno. I mean, I think they really had an intention to dig deep, and they had to dig a little deeper because of the different elements and partnerships and the amount of, well, the size and what the resources that are there, so I get that, to be inclusive. I guess my question is for us to look at that, like, for instance, when I was reading all of them, I get a general feeling that we all definitely want to have community involvement. One of the things that Reno had, not only with community involvement, was also community workshops. They kind of clarified how they wanted the community to be involved. That's what I mean when we go to the depth, and that I enjoyed. Like, we're going to have a workshop. We're just not going to ask people to give their opinions, but they had a speaker who talked about what public art was. I think that that's important when we have workshops, so that there's someone there that introduces what public art is, so that before there's even a community input, there's some education going on how this moves forward. And I think that that's something that we want to make sure that we have in our master plan, and that when we're looking for the people or putting this RFP to look for people, that it's people who are also are helping this, but have those connections on who might be a good person to bring to a community of our size with our particular demographics or the particular vision of what this city is. I like that. I also thought it was really clear, was for me, was the clarity on the artist contracts, which I thought was really, really interesting. In other words, the artist has to maintain it for the first year. So they have to kind of birth it. That's not to mean that there shouldn't be a budget for them to do that, but it's to make sure that they have some ownership of what they've done, which I think is important. And I think that's important. So there were certain things that I really liked. Now, to ask me who leads that, I mean, obviously that organization, I can't remember the name of it. I can't open up two screens on I should have printed my notes, but I didn't, sorry. I don't know if there are other bodies or people who do that, but I did appreciate the way that they went about it in terms of getting the values, and that I liked, as opposed to a more general. I mean, I agree, there are certain things we're not going to get. But to say, not only do we have an artist who's doing work, they're going to look at it, they're going to manage it, and we're going to have some education around it. whether it's in the elementary, middle, or general public, there's going to be workshops or some sort of thing that incorporates the community to be involved in this process. Those are things that I like. Now, I don't know if that goes in the RFP. I don't know the next steps about that. But those are the things that I liked. I didn't see that in the Belmont one. I didn't see that kind of clarity, although once again, it's a smaller, and I'm sure that Reno was trying to make sure they were as inclusive as possible. So they had to do that. And they had more partnerships. So, they could call on the museum. So I get that, but I just think it's something for us to consider.
Karen?
So when you said get us to be educated first, that really sort of took me back to when we did that placemaking seminar at Madhouse all those years ago. And the value that I still draw from that particular 2-day workshop where we really learned about placemaking, and you make a place and people will come. I don't know if those kind of consultants, Stuart, do this kind of training, but that was, I know we paid $50,000 for that back then for who did that. But if there was a group like that who were working in the arts field, I think we could get an immense amount of educational benefit from it for us and everybody else in the community who's interested. Because I mean, I go back to that thought process over and over again when, we're being asked to do things on the council or whatever it is on a subcommittee. And that comes to my mind on a lot of occasions. So I think it would be money well spent.
And I think that might be one of the items that you put in the request for proposal, is that part of what they do is there's an education process as part of the development of the master plan. So you make them responsible for finding the people to educate, and you might, as part of the request for the master plan, as part of the request for proposal, you might say that there is a specialized education to talk with the committee. There may be, and I think in Reno, they did one specifically for the artists who were in the area.
Mhm.
And you might have one for the community. So you might say that, we're looking for, as part of this request for proposal for the development of the master plan, the education of the community is an important aspect of it. And we anticipate having 3 separate public education meetings, in addition to workshops, in addition to surveys, or something like that. And that's what what we're looking for at this point in time, is what the scope of that request for proposal will be, to make sure that it gets the information out, gets you as a committee and the community the right type of master plan. I mean, and the style of the master plan will be important too, I think, in all of this. Does that help?
Yeah, and I think it would be very exciting for the entire community too, to feel like they're on the ground level of something that's going to be massive in the long run.
Mm-hmm.
Beth?
Stuart, a while ago, I sent you information about an organization called Forecast Public Art. They're out of Minnesota, and Jack Bucker is really foremost and well-known across the United States and they have a client service where they do trainings for cities, public art commissions, all that kind of thing. So I personally would prefer to pick our own of somebody who has a broader vision than trying to go through an art consultant who may be more along the sort of standard, hotel corporate type public art, and really start out broader with more nonprofit, wider world vision. Like that would be what I would expect would come from somebody like Forecast Public Art, because they had they recently closed it, but it was the foremost public art review journal that was going on for years and years. That was very, very well respected.
Right. So, I mean, what you could do, as opposed to doing, as having the education aspect as part of the master plan, you could have put out a request for proposal for education workshops. And, depending on what the cost, depending on what the price would be, it could be that we reach out to three companies, three organizations that do this type of work, and we are able to do that more informally. Or if it's a higher price, if we think it's gonna be a higher price, then we would do a formal process. I mean, as a city, we can't just pick and choose the single group that we want to have this done with. We have to, if there's multiple groups that can do the same type of work, we need to be able to give everybody an equal opportunity to participate in the process.
Sure, I understand that, but what I'm saying is that in terms of we decide the format of how we want to be educated rather than have a consultant direct us in, because there's education and there's education on public art.
Right, and that's why I say that you might want to just do it a separate outreach for an
That's what I
education
would like to
process,
see.
as opposed to putting that as part of the master plan. Absolutely.
Camille?
I would personally like to see us do the RFP so that we include all these things, so that when we begin to look at possible, either organizations, entities, person, whatever, that we are clear on all of our kind of, values or expectations, so that we're not piecemealing, you know what I mean? So that we're not saying we're hiring this person or this organization to take us through this process, and then we're hiring another organization to take us through this process. I would like for us to get someone at the helm and then lead us as we do this through possibilities of what that might mean, so that as a committee, we have a constant conversation instead of a conversation with different organizations or people towards a goal.
Beth?
Yeah, I mean, I can see that would be more comfortable, but what I really feel about us as a committee and also us as a town is that we really need to get educated first about what this realm is, just before we can figure out what we want, and then we can have better ideas about what kinds of consultants we want to pick. I mean, we have to know what we want. I feel like I want us to be in the driver's seat rather than have some consultant that we're constantly having to
Wait, Beth, I totally agree with you on that. That's what I'm saying. That's why I don't want to be piecemealing, because then I feel that we have too many people at the table. Does that, you see, I agree with you.
Okay.
That's why I'd prefer seeing us figure out what the RFP is and getting one entity so that we have these conversations, so that they know where we're at and bring to us. And then we can, as a committee, say this, for this particular step in what our next plan is, this is who we're looking at, as opposed to having, X, Y, and Z, and then having to filter all that out and it falling back on us to do another RFP. Does that make sense?
I guess so. I mean, I'm just thinking that it would, in my opinion, I think it'd be better if it was a limited RFP, to have an RFP being about, this is about the education and the community involvement in this process, so that then we're not stuck with, a consultant that when we've gone as a community, as a commission, and also as a community, we've gone through this whole experience of learning what we want. And then suddenly we've got some kind of a contract with a consultant that isn't on that page at all.
Well,
I agree.
yeah, I mean, I think when they respond to the RFP, they'll talk about how, if we ask them to, as part of it, to be an education aspect of it, they'll talk to you about what that education will look like. So you can say that that's not the type of education we're looking for. We're looking for what some other organization has provided, and some organizations may, it doesn't have to be the organization itself or the person. They may subcontract with other people to provide that education aspect. So I just, as staff, we are agnostic as to how you want to do this. But, you could, if you ask for in the RFP that there's an education aspect, then they have to explain how they're going to go about doing that and what resources that they will use. So you won't not be in the driver's seat on that one. no matter how you do it, but both ways can be done.
As long as we're not committed by engaging this consultant, as long as we're not committed to them to have to take us to the next step, because like I'm saying, it'd be nice if we could be open to see what we learn about what we want, both as a commission and as our community. So then at that point, I think we'll have a different idea of what kind of consultant we might want.
Well, maybe I should ask this. When you say consultant, because we may be saying the same thing, but considering two things.
Mhm.
So when I'm thinking of this RFP, I'm thinking of this RFP as to some consultant that's going to help us lead a master plan, a very big picture. And then from that comes the other things that happen out of that, so that we get a very broad picture of where we want, with the input from the education, the workshops, the community, our input, and that's where we're at. And then we have this and we begin to go to, curators or art consultants and things of that a little farther down the line. Because I think with any public art piece we have, we're going to have a time for education and community input.
And probably a different consultant.
Right,
Mhm.
exactly. It could be, yeah,
Mhm.
I agree. But that's what I'm
Right,
saying.
so-
I'm thinking of this as a very big picture.
Right, what I'm thinking of at the moment is that we're talking about somebody putting together a master plan like you see for Reno, like you see for Belmont, like you see for the other cities.
Mhm.
What I'm hearing from Beth, and hopefully I'm not putting words in your mouth, Beth, but what I'm hearing from Beth is that before we go out and try and find that consultant to help us, or that team of consultants to help with the master plan, that Beth would say that the first step in all of this is we should go out and put out an RFP to become more educated as a community.
Exactly. Thank you, Stuart. You got it.
So,
Okay.
and both ways could work,
Yeah.
is you could have the education be an aspect of the master planning process, or you could have the education be a separate process all in and of itself.
Okay,
And as I said, as staff, I am here to facilitate to bring forward whatever the committee is going to recommend to the city council in the best way that I can, and have the committee members hopefully support however I wrote it in front of council.
I agree with that.
Okay, so let me wrap it up and say, because I want to make sure that I'm understanding what everybody says, which I think I was understanding what Beth said, and then I wasn't sure that Camille and you were on the same page, but basically is that we want an RFP for some kind of company, whatever you want to call it, to have public workshops that we will be educating the public. And that's the process to help develop our master plan, right?
Yes,
Okay, so then we get our master plan in place with whatever format, whatever process they go through, whether it's workshops or having a day where they put dots on things and then they come up with the master plan. Then when we have the master plan, we hire the consultant or the developer hires a consultant, or they hire consultants for different aspects of the project, whether it's street fixtures or pathways or whatever, right? It could be many projects. Camille?
well, I was just going to say, from that first step, which is what I agree now, then it's going to come back to us to do another RFP to find the next person to take us to the next step. I think there's a step in between what Beth said and what you got and I finally got, and then what you reiterated. There's a step in between.
What do we call that step?
That's when we just start to develop find the consultant to help us develop the master plan.
So
Yeah.
it's the
Yeah.
second step is the consultant process to help us find the consultant.
For the master plan, yes. But what Beth says, and I have to agree with, having thought about and having understood it better because of the language, is we need to get a consultant that educates us and the community on what the input is to be able to understand the consultant we want to know for the master plan. Does that make sense,
Okay, Karen?
Karen? Yeah.
Okay, so what I'm hearing is that what you're looking for is to hire a consultant who will do something like what we did for the public places, or like the Brisbane University, I think was what Bill Prince did, where with different topics. The topic though for this would be very specifically public art. That we would go out and we would put out a request for proposal for organizations that can conduct 2-3 education sessions related around public art. That's what I'm hearing at the moment.
Yes.
And then after that, this committee would reconvene and discuss, okay, now that we and the entire community, or as much of the community that's interested, because it will never be the entire community, as much of the community is interested in this, and we've done our best to get this word out. We now will say, okay, what's the next step for us to think about developing the master plan? It may be going out and finding a consultant to assist us with the development of a master plan, or after going through the education process, you might say that before we can actually get to that master planning process, we actually need to do step B, and actually the master plan is step C. But you don't know that
Right.
until you go through the education. So maybe part of the education process, in addition to an education on what public art is and how public art impacts a community, which I think is part of the education process, it should also be a part of the education process should be, what are the steps for creating a master plan for a community? Or how does the community go about creating the master plan? So that way you have both the public art aspect and the master plan aspect as part of the education process. Am I capturing this
Yes.
somewhat near what people are thinking?
Perfect.
And if you look on that forecast public art, and there may be other ones, but I just happen to know that one, and I looked at quite in depth at it, like they do that kind of consulting and workshops with.
Yeah, I will tell you, the person who did the master plan for Belmont does that type of thing too. She's very connected with American for the Arts.
Mhm.
So, I mean, she too would be able to do, I mean, the challenge is there's probably a lot of people, and I would send we know Forecast does it. I would send them a copy of the request for proposal. Barbara Bernstein probably does it. I'd send her a request. I'd put it up in all the normal places I would put something like this up. So hopefully we'd get, 3 or 4 or 5 people and art organizations that can assist us through this process.
Yes. Yes.
And then you
yes.
can choose whichever one you think has the best
Right.
ideas on how to on education, and how do we educate? Maybe not the best education, but how do we educate the public? How do we educate the committee?
Beth,
And I would, as part of that, I would think it'd be really interesting if we had like maybe a series of various public artists coming to speak with us, maybe a couple a night that would actually do a slide presentation about whether it's online or in person, about the whole process of what's it like being an artist that works with the city on a public art process. And I think that would be, and we could see them from start to finish giving the explanation. And I think that would be really useful for all of us and the community to understand that, what's involved, because it's easy to criticize or I like or I don't like, but when you don't, but when you have a real person who's going through a real process, you have a whole different level of understanding and empathy.
thank you. Anybody else? Camille, did you have something else to say?
No, I was saying I agree with Beth on that. It would be fun. I guess my question is that part of the responsibility of the consultant we choose to lead this, to make that a part of that? And maybe we should, include that, so that, here's my thing. My thing is I want to make sure that when we get to the consultant, that these ideas about we should have this and have that is included in their possible understanding of what their job description is. Does that
Right.
make sense?
Right,
Okay.
we would put that in the scope of work.
Okay, yes,
So the
thank
scope
you.
of work would say, educate the public on public art, educate the public on master plan development, educate the public on the process artists go through in working with working with public art projects. So that way you'd be able to have, all those things be provided. And, what you would probably find is that there's no one person who's going to do it, and they'll probably create a team to help them through the process. And you'd be able to then once we put the RFP out and we get responses, as we then have an opportunity to talk to the responders and have them share their process with us. And whoever you're most comfortable with is who you would recommend to the city council to choose.
Camille?
Oh, I was just saying exactly. And I just want to make sure that when we put the RFP out, that we talk about in the education, the participation. That it's also workshop based, that there's not only information that goes out, but there are workshops. Participation,
Right.
community participation, that's all. Thank you.
Okay, so we talked about the Belmont and the Reno today. Are we gonna, staff, are we gonna continue moving on with the other cities and are we making notes of what we liked, or do we just go to write to an RFP and say, let's try to find somebody who does this?
Well, I
Process what you want to do.
Sorry, Danette.
Okay, go ahead.
I'm thinking ahead. I apologize. I have a bad habit of that. I know Camille wants to speak before me.
I was
Go
just saying, I would love to see us as a committee continue to read on our part this information, and in between now and then continue that, but to have Stuart give us an RFP at the next meeting so that we can know whatever. Oh,
The next meeting is in a week. So the next
Oh,
meeting,
sorry.
the next meeting, you're going to see a draft request for proposal for the art consultant for the community park, which is what you asked for.
Oh, yes.
And
Okay.
then at the end of April, I could bring back a draft RFP for an education process. And then that would mean because the next week we have one meeting, we have a meeting the first week in April. I think we have a meeting the last week in April already scheduled.
Yeah, whatever. I guess what I'm saying, and I don't want to put a timeline on it. Here's what I don't mean to do that. I apologize.
No, that's
What
okay.
I'd like to see is that instead of continuing to take each city and read and see what we'd like, I would like to then have, knowing what this conversation came back, begin a draft on what the RFP would be for the consultant who begins to educate, and have that RFP be enlightened by what we've done on our own in terms of educating ourselves in relationship to that RFP.
I mean, yes, I would
That's
try and bring back that request for a proposal at the second meeting in April, which I'm now trying to dig up my calendar really quickly, which we have scheduled for April 26th. So on April 5th, you would see an RFP for the community park art consultant. On April 26th, you would see an RFP for the education process. And then depending on what happens on the 5th, you might want to see that one again at the next meeting in May, and then go to council for, so I can go out and put it out for the public. And then, go ahead, I'm sorry.
What's the date in May? Did we select a date?
Not yet.
Oh, okay.
We only went through April.
Beth?
I'm just wondering if we're ready to jump in with our consultant on that project in the park, because it just feels like I'm afraid that we're just going to make a lot of mistakes kind of going into it, not really having all of the education and clear ideas of what we want behind us.
I thought that was the reason why you wanted an art consultant, was to help you through that process.
No, we were gonna, yeah, but you said that at the next one, you were gonna have an RFP straight away for the project in the park, was what I
Right,
heard.
because that was the direction I received from the
Yeah, but we
committee
haven't,
before.
yeah, that was from last time, but now we just made a new kind of direction. So I'm wondering if we still, I'm asking if we still want to go ahead on that direction that we had decided last time about jumping in. I know we kind of talked about, well, maybe it would be a good idea to have this as a trial project. But I also feel like it's still going to be real money, real effort, real everything. And why not wait? We're not in any big hurry. Why not wait until we get the education component and the community involvement under our belt? Because otherwise we may risk people going like, wait a minute, how did this happen? I thought we were going to be having this community involvement thing. And now all of a sudden you're moving ahead with an arts consultant. I mean, I know how things work in Brisbane. So just asking.
Good point. Would anybody like to respond to that?
Well, I think it's a good point. I also think that it's a point that we need to have everyone present to decide on. You know, I don't want Stuart and the staff to have to do more work than they need, to be quite honest. But I think since the last meeting, that's where we were at. Let's see what the RFP looks like. And at least it's there. That doesn't mean we have to send it out. I don't know. I mean, I would like to hear the staff's response, but I understand what you're saying. And the large part of me agrees, but I also know what we decided, and we don't have everybody here to have the full conversation. Does that, you know what I mean? I'm kind of straddling the abyss, so to speak.
I mean,
So,
right,
what do
just because I bring it to you doesn't mean you have to recommend that I go to council with it.
Exactly. So yes, I would suggest that since we did that, we don't have everyone here. Let's just bring it. And then at least we know we have a little more, we're educating and we have a little more understanding of where we are with RFPs. It's not, you know, since it's on the table and we don't have enough people, doesn't mean we have to act on it.
Wise words.
I mean, it's a lot. As long as Stuart doesn't mind
It's done.
doing work that might
Yeah.
not. Oh, it's already done. Okay. then
Yeah,
never
that's
mind.
Yeah, I wrote it because there was no way I was going to be able to not write it prior to this meeting in order to get it ready for the next meeting,
Got it.
next week.
Okay, well then,
Right.
if that's the case, then bring it on.
And I
Right.
will say, I used a RFP for a similar type of RFP from the San Francisco Art Commission to, put the bones of it together. And, as I think we talked about last time, there's a lot of education that's going to need to happen through this process, because at the moment, you have a very wide open perspective of what kind of art and what type of person you're looking for there. And, I think that's going to give you, if you were to put that request for proposal out, you would get a very wide variety of responses at this point in time. And that was, I think, part of the conversation last time, was that you wanted that wide variety to help educate yourselves as to what possibilities are out there. But
Yeah,
it is ready. I sent it to Angel this morning.
Camille?
I just say we move forward. It'll inform us. We don't have to act, and we'll have more people to have the discussion. That's how I.
And I will assure you, it won't be the first nor the last time in my public service career that I wrote something that never went anywhere. I know, as a council member, Karen, you're shocked by that. I know.
Yeah, and I think it is important to try to move on. I mean, it's a smaller-ish project versus like the education and then with the master plan is a much bigger process. I mean, and I know that we've been sitting on a lot of this money, and people are kind of wondering, what has a public art, group even been doing? If there's nothing to really show for it. So I know there has been that discussion in the past, but nonetheless, so for the April 26th, we talked about doing an RFP for the education process. Did we also choose 2 new cities to kind of review, or does anyone have any ideas? I just want to make sure.
Wait, Angel, I'm sorry. I thought what we had decided was, everybody please correct me if I'm wrong or whatever, that we would not the next meeting, but the meeting after, begin
April
with an
26th, yes.
whatever that, if it's okay with Stuart and the staff to have an RFP, the committee on its own would be, continue to educate themselves on the various city RFPs and master plans, so that in light of what we learn, we can begin to look at what we want to add or change.
So you don't want to choose 2 more to review, you just want it to be open for reviewing any of them?
That was what but I don't know. That's left out.
I thought everyone kind of wanted to do it in chunks, so everyone would be on the same page of comparing
Okay.
2 at a time.
Then I'm fine. All right.
Karen?
I kind of liked the idea that we can all look through whichever ones we wanted to, and then maybe send, if you're reading something and you find something that you like, send that comment to either Angel or Stuart and say, hey, on this one, this was interesting. Because I know we can't send it to each other, but we could send it to staff if we found things that we liked. Because otherwise we're going to be reviewing these things till the end of the year, quite frankly. Because we're not going to be in July and August, so.
Right, but since the process that I've just heard, you will have plenty of time to review them, because before we go through the master planning process, we're going to go through an education process, and that education process could take 6 to 9 months.
Right.
Now, how's that going to work though? Do we need to go a little bit quicker though for the
Well,
master
that's why
plan? I
I-
mean, if they're going to be coming out with a specific plan with the Baylands, I mean, is this going to put us really behind?
Well, it's not only that, we've got high-speed rail in the middle of all of this too. So
Yeah.
there's a lot going on that could stop us at any time.
Beth, you had your hand up a while ago.
Yeah, I guess I actually want to hear more about that, Karen, like where are we in the process? But my comment I was just going to make was that I appreciated having a limited number to go through, so that I could stay focused. And it gave me a goal. And even though I couldn't comment when I first arrived, as you were talking, it was all coming back to me again. And so I would prefer to be that we're all on the same page talking about 2 in comparison. And then as we move along, we might go refer back to Reno or Belmont, that kind of thing, so that we're all it can help focus our conversation. I know that I have trouble sitting myself down to read that stuff. It's a real effort. And so if I know that I have a deadline and an assignment, there's a better chance that I'm going to follow through with that. And that I think that we look at that process as being our education, by studying these other ones. And this is, and this is a part of the education that I'm doubtful that very many of the citizens of Brisbane are going to want to take on. But then, we can also we have that under our belt to understand. And then when it comes time to write our own master plan, we'll have all of those examples to draw from. So that's my
Camille?
thought. But I also want to reiterate that I want to hear from Karen about where we are in the larger picture.
So, so having said that, I'm fine with that. I guess my question would be, what are the 2 next cities we're going to read?
Okay, and Karen, Camille had a question for you.
So I don't know and I don't know. How about that? Surprise, surprise. So the whole high-speed rail thing is the biggest bugaboo that we could possibly face relative to anything and everything, including their request that we relocate the entrance to town, knock down the bridge, relocate the fire station, take out this, take out that, and by the way, all at our own expense. Right? So that's not a conversation I can really have because it's so unrealistic. It's so far-fetched. The governor and every other city in the state of California is wrestling with this idea of what the hell is happening with high-speed rail. And we don't know. We don't know, but they could come in and say that at any minute. That's why we can't even look at, what are we doing here? What are we doing there? Is because high-speed rail has the authority to do whatever they want if they're given the money to do it. So there's the I don't know answer. And we are expecting a specific plan from BDI at any time, but when, I don't know. So there, I told you, I don't know and I don't know. But the high-speed rail thing, everybody needs to educate themselves on relative to anything and everything that's happening in this town. I mean, what I told you is true. That's what they said they want to do.
Beth?
Karen, does Caltrain, is that a moving part as well?
Caltrain electrification is going along its merry way as is. They're doing their job, and the Caltrain electrification has got nothing to do with high-speed rail's plans.
But wasn't there some consideration about moving the Caltrain train yards that were at Townsend down here?
Prologis would probably love that to happen because that would open up that area for them to build some more multi-billion-dollar homes.
Is that a possibility is what I'm asking? Is that something that we need? to
Everything is
consider?
possible.
Uh-huh. And would
Everything
we
is
have
possible.
any say over that, or
Nope.
is that an eminent domain as well?
High-speed rail has said they need 100 acres of the Baylands for their light maintenance rail facility, but but a light maintenance rail facility actually needs 9 acres. They are requesting 100, and you can go back, it's public record. I called them on it at a meeting last year and said, if a light maintenance rail facility is only 9 acres, why do you need 100 acres? Their direct response was, we are planning to move all the trains from 4th and Townsend to Brisbane. And I asked them how that would operate. And the answer was 365 days a year, 24/7, noise and lights. That's what they said, and that's public record. So I don't know and I don't know. I wish I could give you a better answer, Beth, but you know, the answer to most of the questions is money. And you well know that.
All right.
I'm
Well,
sorry, did I just burst everybody's bubble for the afternoon? Everyone looks depressed now. Okay, I'm leaving, Stuart, I'm going. I've depressed everybody, I'm going.
I feel like
away.
he smacked me in the face.
All right, we're gonna go,
You
we're
were in
gonna,
those meetings.
we're gonna
usually
go
my
back
job,
to the
Ellen.
next, we're gonna go back to the next 2 cities we're gonna study in the
Okay,
world
good
of
idea.
Can
art,
we do that,
okay?
please?
Whew.
okay, my suggestion, I don't have my pile in front of me, but, and I could go get it, but my thought is to do a thick one and a thick one, a thick one and a thin one, like we did with this one, with, you know, so kind of a lighthearted one, and then one that's like, you know, there's a couple textbook one, I think the one back east, then some university was really a tough one to get through.
Yeah, there's a Pasadena's very light.
Right.
And it seems pretty, well, it's very small print. And then Salinas, Seattle are about the same. San Diego's a bit heavier. I think there was 2 that were kind of from the same consultant. I think someone had said in the past, I can't remember. And then City of Carlsbad is a beast. So I don't know if you want to do like Pasadena and Salinas.
Or you might just want to pick one if we're gonna look at the
True.
the education RFP. Just pick one of the big ones.
Well, Carlsbad, she said, was a thick one, so let's include Carlsbad.
As the only one.
Well, you're also
Well,
gonna be
as
looking
the
at the
thick
RFP.
one, as the thick one.
Well,
But you're only
which-
commenting on one though, Stuart. So you only have to go
That was-
through it. You only have one to comment on.
That's true.
Maybe.
Was Carlsbad the beast?
Yes.
How about Carlsbad and Pasadena?
Yeah.
Anybody have any other suggestions?
Well, I just want to also, this one from Tacoma, just about the community guide to creating public art. If you haven't looked through that, or maybe re-look through that, it does have a lot of things of like, well, what is it you're looking for? How do you engage the community? You know, so that's kind of like an education piece as well, if someone hasn't looked at that. But
Which one, Angel?
it's a tacomaculture.org arts community guide. So it's a very, very thin, doesn't have any photos or pictures or anything. It's just a black and white, but it's from Tacoma.
Oh, okay.
So, okay, so you want to do Carlsbad, which is really big, although it has a lot of images and stuff. And then Pasadena, which is thin. Is that what we decided? I wasn't sure.
Okay.
Doesn't matter to me.
I did want to make a comment in that, you know, Beth, I thought you brought up some really good points on the park. Because, you know, of course, I've been on, I don't know how long I've been doing this, 4 or 5 years, I'm not sure. And I feel like I have nothing to show. Really, and like I want something and what we tried didn't work. So I'm really torn because I want something and I want to go ahead, but I've seen things over the years backfire as well. So I'm a little bit torn, like how do we proceed? I'm not sure. So you got me thinking. So I just wanted to throw that out there that I'm not personally, I don't know. I have to think about this. But anyways, I just thought I'd bring that up. I mean, at least if we have a consultant that helps us through that with that one, because this main art master plan really is geared towards the Baylands, right? And of course, we don't know anything. So, and that's like a different project. So
I think that information from the master arts plan would be very informative for us in town as well.
yeah. I mean, I agree. Beth?
So I'm not sure, and this is, I guess I would also ask Karen this too, is, I mean, I think that the master plan is going to include all work of the different places that we considered around town. And those would be the ones that we could actually do now. And also a lot of the money that will be coming in from the Baylands, you know, maybe that could be, you know, earmarked. We can't obviously go ahead and put in any public art at this point until we know what's going to go on with the high-speed rail and Caltrain. So, you know, I also think that that's something that's going to have to leave a bit of a maybe earmark or whatever in our general plan too, because we aren't going to know what that's going to look like. But I can totally hear your wanting and your desire to want to move ahead and accomplish something. But I think that we have a ways to go in terms of really thinking about how to involve the community in this. I'm sort of, you know, I lead the Brisbane Artists, and we get together once a month on Sunday mornings in Firth Park. And I talk about that I'm on this commission, and I'm surprised that nobody has asked me, oh, how do I come to one of your meetings or anything like that? And so I feel like if, you know, we need to find a way to really reach out and involve people, or it's going to come back at us in some other way. Cause it's like, you know, people are really funny in that sense of, you know, even though they're being asked, you know, until something's really happening and then they feel left out, then they find a way to kick up the sand or whatever. You know, you've all seen it happen. So, you know what I mean?
But wouldn't the consultant help us with that? That's the part of their job, is to do a major outreach to the community, whether it's like at our you know, day in the park and all that, and the community art groups here. I mean, isn't that the consultant that we're trying to hire? That's part of their job description, is to do all of that.
I don't think that, I think that would be a different kind of person than somebody who specializes in really manifesting public art projects. I mean, they would have some information about it, but you know, you have to admit too that Brisbane is kind of its own thing. You know, it would really take a person that knows how to reach out in our community. And we're gonna have to figure that out ourselves. Yeah.
Can I just say, I think, Angel, for clarification, that there's two things that are happening here. I think the conversation between Danette and Beth regarding the park is about that. And then there's that other conversation about the master plan. And I think that the question was, do we move ahead with looking at the park piece? And I think what I'm hearing is that there's questions there, but I would like to say, I think that we should still at least investigate.
Mhm.
That's all.
Yeah,
And if it's on the
we-
next agenda, we should investigate, because
Yeah.
if nothing else, it will inform and educate us, and it'll bring more
Mhm.
conversation and discussion to the point.
Yeah, absolutely. And we'll have the other two people. So it should be really
Yes.
discussed at that
Yeah.
time anyway.
Right.
And the RFP is done, thanks to Stuart, so.
Yes, thanks
Um,
to Stuart.
Mhm. So, but anyway, can I just also mention that it's, as I'm looking at this, there is, and Danette brought this up, that, that we have some funds now, and they have primarily come from projects that that happened in the town, not necessarily out on the Baylands. And we can't really plan anything for the Baylands until we really know what's going to happen out there. I mean, I've always been one of those people that's advocated for, like, we need to get the public art thing on the ground level of whatever we're doing. Clearly, at this moment, given what Karen's telling us, I mean, you can only imagine the Baylands development people, how frustrated they must be, because they can't move forward either. So I think that I think our master plan may actually have a few different components, and that we can move forward with the part of the master plan that is about the town,
Yeah.
the art that's going to go in the town, where most of the funds have come from, and earmark, in a sense, that the master plan for the Baylands may have to come or become more fleshed out as we find out what's going to happen out there.
I mean, the BDI is gonna give us a specific plan sometime this spring,
Wow. How are they doing that when they don't know?
because they're gonna plan for it as if it's 100% their project. And then if high-speed rail comes in and does eminent domain, then they have to work with BDI in order to get the land. But they're gonna assume that that high-speed rail doesn't happen when they present a specific plan to us.
Can I ask, Stuart, does that mean to, like, if they get approved plans from us, does that raise the value of their property when it comes time for settling on a project?
I wouldn't be able to
By
answer that. I
chance?
mean, I wouldn't be able to answer that question. I don't have the expertise.
Uh-huh. Yeah, that's what I sort of figured that. That's what's their hurry to get this approved, is my guess.
Good answer, Stuart.
I mean, that's an attorney question more than
Yeah.
a public
so-
art question.
Quick question, Stuart. So based on what you're saying, and they're coming this spring, then do we have a deadline we're trying to meet, so that, like, how quickly, when they put these plans, and then later on, we're like, well, now we have a master art plan. They're like, well, it's too late. We've already thought about all these things. And so what do we have a deadline or time frame on the master plan? And like Beth said, should it come in chunks? Do we work on our town and then we get that part done and then we add in the Baylands? How do you?
I mean, I think the goal would be is that as the specific plan is going through its process, that my understanding was that the Public Art Committee wanted to be able to have input in what kind of public art they would want. And therefore, that's the reason why you wanted us to move forward with the citywide master plan, recognizing that there was different aspects of it. But what I've heard today is if we want to do an education process first, I mean, there's a process that we have to go through for that, and that will be a few months between the time that you actually put an RFP out and by the time you hire somebody, and then they spend 2 or 3 months educating. And then if you go with the master plan after that, you'll probably be a year to a year and a half out before your master plan is done. And the specific plan may actually be completely approved by then.
Mhm.
Wow.
Wow.
Okay, so,
Well, you're talking about probably not getting a master plan done till towards the later half of 2023. I'm just
Yeah.
trying to,
Yeah,
I'm-
I also wanted to say we're coming into summer, which is hard to get community involvement.
right, I mean, I'm not. So I
right.
think that was the reason why we were trying to move the master plan forward quicker. But it's, I think what will happen is that, yeah, and you always get into a conversation of and I've heard the conversation, so it's not me coming up with this idea, is do you have art reflective of the space that's being created? Or do you have art help create the space? Both of them are legitimate ways in which public art happens. You know, and it's hard to say which one is, you know, I think both of them have merit. And you've seen really good public art in a space that's already been created, and you've seen bad public art in spaces that have already been created, and you see bad public art in space and where they started from the very beginning, and it was still bad public art.
True.
So, I think you need to move at what speed you need to move at, and recognize that artists since the beginning of time have been able to help create wonderful places to be, even when spaces have been completely built out, seemingly completely built out.
Yeah, it's like that park they created under this broken building somewhere in New York.
Right. I mean,
It's beautiful.
you know, the High Line in New York is like a beautiful space of an already created piece of property. Whatever you do will be right and wrong at the same time.
Great.
And
That's
that's
for sure.
But that's also the nature of art.
Yeah.
Art is always right and wrong at the same time.
Mm.
So my basic perspective in government is we are here for 100+ years. You want to make sure that the process is right and that people are in agreement with what you're doing. Because if it takes you 2 years to do something that no one agrees with, or it takes you 8 years with people agree with, it's still going to be here for the next 50 years. So I have a very long-term perspective of government. You know, government has been around since the beginning of civilization, and it's everywhere. So we won't go away, and art doesn't go away. And you want to make sure that it's, from my perspective, you want to make sure it meets the needs of the community, and however you as a committee feel that it's going to meet the needs of the community is the best way to do it.
Beth,
I just want to thank you for that perspective, Stuart. That's it's really great, because if we try to shapeshift our actions to the timeline of the Baylands development folks, we're not going to satisfy ourselves or the community or anyone. And you're right. We're hoping that whatever we do put in place is going to last for a long time and that people will enjoy it. So let's take our time and we'll get there. I really, you made me just take a deep breath and relax. Thank you.
Yeah, and it may be that if, you know, having some of it being built out might actually help the art make more sense. And I know, Beth, that's, you know, you've advocated the other side of it at times, but both of, you know, I've seen both of them work.
I agree. Okay.
Camille, you had your hand up.
Oh, no, I'm fine. I was just agreeing with what everyone was saying. I
Karen?
think we have, oh, I'm sorry. I was going to say, and I think we have our marching orders. I mean, and it's a process, like any art process. You take 3 steps forward, 4 back, next time 5 forward. Oh, here's another thing.
Oh, so you're all into the dance aspect of all of this, I hear.
Right. Change that right there.
You know, and from my perspective, I'm just going to say, we do what we want to do that we think is right. And we're going to have everybody else fall in line behind us. How's that? So we're going to do the things that we think are right. And I guess there's a bit more slapping to go on to some other people outside of our town who want to tell us what to do. But I think we just go for it. Just go get it done.
All right, any other comments before we move to public comments?
I just want to confirm, which are the 2 that we're doing in all that? I got lost. I know it was Carlsbad, and what was the other one?
Pasadena.
Carlsbad and Pasadena are for in 1 week.
No, that's in 4 weeks.
April 26th.
Okay, great,
April
because I need to read it right before.
The
Otherwise,
next
I
week
won't hold
is,
on to it.
the next meeting is about the other agenda.
It's about the other
plan.
agenda. Right, it's about the community park, and also there's going to be another item on that agenda. Is it Lippman or is it You're muted.
It's the Brisbane School District arts and music property tax that will be coming up. That they would, that Nancy Laxamana has reached out to us for a temporary project that they would like to talk about to maybe help also get the word out and get support for the property tax vote that will be coming up.
So we thought that it would be appropriate, since it's a public art aspect, that they want to bring it to this committee.
Cool.
All right, any other comments by committee members? Nope, okay, we will move on to public comments.
I have not received any emails, texts, or no one has joined our meeting.
Okay, so the final item on the agenda is adjournment. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
I move that we adjourn.
Neil,
Second.
second. Beth, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
You know,
I,
even if no one votes for it, we can still adjourn.
Oh, great, I didn't know that. All right,
Bye.
all
Thank
right.
Thank you, everyone.
Have a
bye,
good evening.
everyone. Thank you.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you. Bye.
Bye.